welcome back to At Home with Open House. For those of you who are new, At Home with Open House is a programme of live virtual tours that we've designed as a way of getting into some houses during lockdown. And today we're going to be in Golden Lane Estate, which is in the City of London. My name's Sian, I'm the head of Open House Festival, and I'm joined by Hafsa, who is the assistant curator at Open City, who's also been working on this programme. And for those of you who were with us last time when we were in Vanbrugh Park Estate, this will be a nice opportunity for you to do a little comparison of some Chamberlain Bond Powell design. So we're going to be going to two different homes on the estate, one led by Sue Pearson and one by Roland Jeffrey. So Sue, I don't know if you want to just, oh, your camera's off, so I won't ask you to do a wave, but you'll be with us in a second. Sue is an architect and is a common councillor for Cripplegate Ward in the City of London. She's lived on the estate since 2008. Roland, if you're able to give us a wave if you're here, although I can't see everybody at the moment, but we'll see you in a second. It has lived on the estate for about 15 years, is now retired. During his working life, he was project manager on lots of new build and rehabilitation social housing schemes, as well as restoration of a wide range of historic buildings. And we're also joined by our guest host, Paul Lincoln. Paul, do you want to give us a wave?
Hello.
As well? Thank you. Paul is the commissioning editor for Landscape, which is the journal, the Landscape Institute. He's also a City of London guide, and he also lives on the estate and has lived there for 15 years. So there'll be time for questions at the end of the tours. So please write your questions in the chat if you have any questions. And if you would like to ask the question yourself, then please say so when you write your question in the chat. I'm going to put some instructions in the chat box now as to how you should set up your speaker view to see everybody. But I'll hand straight over to Paul now to get us started and give us a bit of an overview on the estate.
Okay, well, good morning. Thank you for that introduction and a very warm welcome to Golden Lane Estate. We are in the City of London, London's financial district, and just on the border with Islington. Golden Lane Estate is home to about 700 people, split between 500 flats and maisonettes. Golden Lane Estate is, I think, a very fascinating place, well, to live and to visit. We've been involved with Open House for about 5 or 6 years, and I hope very much that we'll be able to welcome people physically to the estate for Open House this September. But in the meantime, it's great to have people visiting us on Zoom. The estate was built between 1957 and 1967. It was commissioned by our local authority, which is the City of London, and it's built in an area of London which was completely destroyed by the Blitz in November 1940. So the area, which is the Cripplegate Ward, includes Golden Lane Estate, includes the Barbican Estate and the Barbican Arts Centre. In terms of very brief history, the City of London at first was considering building offices in the area. It then realised that there was an acute need to provide housing for people, not only who had suffered during the Blitz, but also to help bring the city back to life as a financial centre. So it built it commissioned Golden Lane Estate, and it did so by an open architectural competition. The winners of this were the architects Chamberlain, Powell and Bon, all of whom had been studying and working at Kingston University, and they decided, although each of them entered a separate project for the competition, they decided that if one of them were to win, the three of them would form an architectural practice to develop the estate, which they did so. Many of you on this call will have visited Vanbrugh Estate 2 years ago, which is slightly more recent, but the portfolio of their work is enormous because it includes not only the Vanbrugh Estate, the Barbican Centre and the Golden Lane Estate, but also Leeds University. What we're going to do is visit two different types of accommodation. One of them is a maisonette, which is in the block called Hatfield House, and that is the one that Sue Pearson lives in. And the other one is essentially a one-bedroom flat in Crescent House, which is the newest. And in fact, what's really interesting is about 10 years separates the flat that we'll see that Sue is living in and Crescent House. And what I'd like to do now is to find Sue Pearson. Sue is also what's known in the city as a common councillor. So she is a representative for the Cheapside ward, and in fact the only councillor in the city representing this estate. So Sue, if you can hear me, welcome, and let's have a look at your flat. And what I'm going to do is, as you take us round, if there's any bit of your flat which I feel you're not properly exposing to the world, I will politely encourage you to do so. So Sue, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Well, I was going to say this is a bit of a shock because I was going to go second, but I'm now going first. So, and I'll still do the same route around, which is I'm starting in my living room. And I think going to show you, first of all, just something about one of the really great features of the flat, which are these huge windows. But first of all, just a bit of a background. We've got hardwood surrounds to the main living room windows with things like this wonderful groove for your net curtains, for the wire for your net curtains. And up at the top, a grille, which I'll explain later when we go upstairs. There used to be a curtain rail box which ran, and you can see where the posts were that held it. So there used to be a curtain rail which went straight across the window. Obviously, no longer does. So, and just to go on a bit about the windows, these are aluminium. It's a great big, almost like a guillotine. This is the manufacturer, and they made the windows for all the Routemaster buses. And the way that the window works is, whoops, if you can see, I don't know whether you can see that, it's a bit sunny, but there's a chain that goes right up to the ceiling and comes down, and the window at the top comes down, and this one goes up. So there'll be a bit of a wobble whilst I try and put this in the stand whilst I open the window. So hopefully you got a view of me opening the window. And so this is, so as you can probably see, the chain up there and the window going up and down. I'll just show you quickly around building site, so sorry about the noise. This is the view around, which I'll show you from upstairs to identify the buildings. But this underneath me, I have a studio flat. They're the only studio flats on the estate that have their own gardens, and they run all the length of this block. So another thing here just to notice is that the bedroom overhangs. So sort of we have an angled effect here, so that it shades you from the worst of the sunshine during the summer. So I'll just I'll leave the door open and just take you straight upstairs. This is a rather nice staircase, which I'll show you better when we get downstairs. So first, we've got a very small landing into the bedroom, and if I open this window, which is again, it's another sliding window, so that we can see outside. So straight across is Basterfield House, and up behind it you can just see the top of Great Arthur House. Panning around, you've got Lauderdale Tower and what is now called Blake House, which used to be the YMCA of the Barbican. And in front of that, Culham Welsh House. Down below, you have what used to be the nursery and what is now the Ralph Perring Centre with a little allotment patch. If you carried on underneath that roof, we've got the swimming pool, and over to the right between Cullen Welsh and Crescent House, which you can see with the arched windows. And below there is our 2 tennis courts.
Do you want to say a quick word about the history of the allotments, because they obviously they're much more recent than the rest of the estate?
Yeah, well, I was going to say once the nursery moved, obviously there was a playground and a small building, and no real use for it. And some very keen gardeners on the estate actually managed to get a grant from, I think it was from the Mayor of London, and it started off with just some 1-ton sacks, which were filled with soil and put on pallets. And I think it started with 10. It certainly started just on this side, but became very popular. And in, I think, 2016, when plastic bags started to disappear from supermarkets and Tesco's did a Bags for Help, we got a £10,000 grant and turned all the what were then decaying sacks into the 1 metre square boxes, which there are 42 of them. So there are 42. We're still called baggers, but that's the history of this area. So if I just go back into the flat now, and this is an unusual feature. There aren't a lot of flats that still have these windows in the bedroom wall, which is quite, I mean, because I like to sleep in the dark, it's quite annoying, but actually it's really nice because you get extra views and extra light. So you saw, it's no good me showing you this. In Paul's flat, you saw behind him what were original doors for the wardrobes. I've got modern ones that just slide across. But now in the back bedroom, and here is our fire escape door with my break glass so that my neighbours on the other side
Classic.
We've lost your connection.
It's getting the track.
So
Right, I think she's lost her connection and has dropped out of the call. So we'll just wait for her to return. But Paul, I don't know if you want to take over, or did you want to go to Roland's tour instead while we're waiting?
Give it 1 second. Shall I just ring?
Oh,
it says Sue Pearson is co-host now. Maybe Sue's back.
So she should be back now.
Okay.
Not quite sure what happened there.
I think it's possibly because you went. Did you go out? It's probably worth not going out.
I'm back again.
Okay. Do you want to look at? I can't see you now, but if you have returned, which is brilliant, do you want to just look at all the frames before? If you go back into the room you were in, into the back bedroom.
Yes.
Can you point out what I really like is the around that's there, all the framing around the window and the way there's this kind of indents, because we've all got these. One thing that came up at Vanbrugh 2 weeks ago was the way there were so many shelves kind of fitted under. Can you just point those out? Have you frozen again?
Sue, can you hear us?
Sue?
No, we've lost her.
No, she's dropped again. Shall we go to Roland's?
Have you
flat?
found Roland?
Yes.
In
So
that
he
case,
was.
brilliant. Let's go to Roland and then we can go back to Sue again. How about that? So is Roland there?
Yes, he's here. Can you hear us, Roland?
Roland?
I can, yes, I can.
What we're going to do is swap back to you and then go back to Sue. So if you'd like, can we offer a warm welcome to Roland?
Thank
Roland.
you. Thank you,
Roland,
Paul.
Okay, just explain where you are and let's start with that.
I'm in Crescent House, and I was going to start outside, but because I've also got connection wobbles occasionally, I'm starting inside where the connection is stronger. But I'm looking out of the window of Crescent House, and there goes a bus. This is the building, Crescent House, that's on Aldersgate Street and Goswell Road. It's on both of those streets because it changes its name right here. It is the old Roman road north from London to York. And for some reason, since there's been a road here, it's always curved quite noticeably. So the front of Crescent House is curved and the back is a straight line on the grid on which the rest of the estate is planned. And the result of that is that Crescent House has a very thin waist in the middle where access to the flats is by a windowless corridor that's a little bit like being on the lower deck of a ship, I think. And then at the ends where we are now, the two elevations split apart and there are light wells in the building, which I'll show you in a moment. And as you see, the view out of this flat is a bit different from the view out of Sue's, which is very quiet and restful and leafy. This is a proper city street. And it has quite a different atmosphere, I think. The point about this flat, which is somewhere between a one bed and a studio, is that the architects have been incredibly ingenious in working out how to make a little space go a long way. And one of their best tricks is the line of the upper glazing there, which follows round in the white fitted cupboards there, the same line, and the head height wall, which semi-separates the bedroom, and then into a clear story window, which is fully glazed there, the same line, it goes all through the flat and into the entrance hall on the other side. And the point about this is not only does it give a consistency to all of the spaces, but you can see through. So we're looking through from the entrance hall towards the bathroom, the bedroom, and the living space there, through the glazing. It's a wonderful feature, and it makes what would otherwise be quite cramped and claustrophobic spaces feel much more flowing and spacious. And it's a very valuable device. I mentioned the light wells at either end of Crescent House where the two elevations split apart. And we're looking out of my entrance hall now into those light wells. Balcony access, there goes one of my neighbours. We see each other coming and going along these balconies, down to the first floor. This is the second floor. There's the top. Flats have what are sometimes called Catalan vaults. There's shallow vault roofs, which is a very nice feature of the top floor flats only. And down there is the public realm. You may be able to see looking through there, pedestrian walking through in a moment. And it reminds me of blocks of flats I've seen in Budapest and Vienna. Doesn't feel like the sort of thing we do. It is nice to see your neighbours coming. We sometimes do. There's not too much curtain twitching, and especially in lockdown, it's been nice to feel with other forms, even if we're isolated from each other. Coming back inside now, the floor here is vinyl. It's actually a replacement. Originally there was vinyl, and there was underfloor heating in these flats, hot water underfloor heating that was disconnected, I think, in the late 80s or early 90s. There's now all sorts of combinations of heating, but I've restored something like the original lino here. I've kind of unmodernized this flat, ripping out a lot of rather nasty wooden, what I call yuppie flooring from the 90s. And although it's not the original finish, I've laid cork in the rest of the flat because it's so nice to walk on. It's warm and it's slightly soft and it's a natural material. I love it. Now, keen to save space as always, you can come out of that yellow door and go straight into the bathroom, the yellow door being the bedroom. But you would then be on display to the outside world, including the school kids going to school down there. So the architects have provided one of several sliding doors from which you can separate off the bathroom so that it becomes an ensuite bath, and then you open the door and your bathroom is then available to guests. And even in the bathroom, there is that clear story looking into the room, going all the way around the wind measurements. So although it's beginning to show its age, it's rather difficult to replace because tiles have gone to metric dimensions, and these are imperial dimensions. I think you can get them, but patch repairing old tiling is quite a struggle. So I've left it as it is because I rather like the imperfections. It makes the building look 60 years old, which is as old as it actually is. This is the screen that goes into the kitchen, and you would know it because I've got all the pots and pans and clobber for the kitchen there. I rather like having that on display. At least you know what it is. And when you're in the kitchen cooking, it's an internal kitchen, you can look through that window between the pots and pans and you can see your neighbours cooking in their kitchens over there. There's quite a lot of sort of transparency in this building. You can see right through it in various ways. Part of this screen is solid and part is glazed. And the solid bits have storage on the other side, the inside of the kitchen. Very briefly, the other side looks like that. Yet more pots and pans stored in that screen. And there it is looking out across to my neighbours. Many of the finishes in here I've replaced, and they're not original. Again, there's a problem of fitting in modern appliances because they come to different dimensions than when the flat was built, which is a shame. Now, the whole of that wall of the flat is made of the most wonderful African hardwood. I think it's Iroko. If it's not Iroko, it's something very, very similar. And it's an absolutely magnificent piece of joinery. Sorry to say, it's quite likely that in the next 2 years, the whole thing's going in the skip because it doesn't perform very well thermally and it doesn't perform very well acoustically, and it's beginning to rot. This shelf here, which protrudes out over the road, I've got old CDs in it. Other people have knickknacks and plants, is a bit of a heat loss area. I think most of our winter heat goes out through that shelf. And of course, it's single glazed, as windows were in the 50s and 60s. This building was started in 1959, finished in 62. So it was designed in the 50s when everyone thought energy would be cheap and nuclear power would solve it all. And of course, we know it's not like that. I think by coming close here, you can possibly see the high quality grain of the wood and these nice rebates to the windows. It's a magnificent piece of joinery.
You want to also, Roland, just go down to the bookshelves, because I think it's really interesting to, well, your CD shelves, because that was also an aspect of Vanbrugh 2 weeks ago. And it's also, you've got the built-in shelves there. They kind of, are they exactly in line with the built-in shelves in the kitchen? Or they're very similarly lined, aren't they?
Well, they're similar, except that in these cases, they stick out in the open air over the road. So they become a feature of the outside elevation. There are these little projecting shapes, which are in fact the outside of these shelves. And they're a lovely detail. It's just that they didn't bother to insulate them.
And also, the way, where your desk is, that juts out into the street as well, doesn't it? I don't know if it's possible to show that through the window. If you just,
well,
that's it.
You can see here.
There, perfect. Yeah.
I've described it as a curtain wall made of hardwood, but in fact it kinks out, and every single flat on the curved elevation of this building has a slightly different position for that bay window. So replacing them is going to be a one-by-one process.
And it's just worth saying, because the image that was used to publicise this event was of Crescent House looking straight down the road, and you do have this astonishing series of jutting out little, well, they're obviously offices, but little jutting out bays fitting into the curve. So it's an astonishingly beautiful way of building the front of the building.
It is. It's a very complicated and subtle elevation. And unfortunately, there you may be able to see some of the rot in the wood. At some point 20 or more years ago, this magnificent hardwood was painted with waterproof paint. Now, hardwood should be oiled with special oils, not painted with waterproof paint. And the effect has been to trap moisture and cause rot.
Sure.
And I think for that reason, it's likely that all this is going to have to be replaced.
Yeah.
It's a Grade 2 star listed building, and obviously you would normally try and conserve as much of the fabric as possible. But I think that is probably unlikely. Simply because there's a main road out there and it's just too tricky to piece in pieces of wood one by one.
Do you want to pan, if you step backwards so that we've got a view of the whole room now, because we've seen the detail, just maybe...
I'll just show you the bedroom.
Oh yeah, let's have a look at the bedroom.
I mentioned that this wall is head height. That doesn't go up to the ceiling, it stops there. And the bedroom sleeping space has its original sliding shutters. And when you're in it, there's that clear story line again. There's the head height wall there, it doesn't go up to the ceiling. And so when you're in it, this is quite a small sleeping space, but the ceiling floats away into the distance. So it doesn't feel claustrophobic, even when the shutters are closed, you go into your sleeping hutch at night. It doesn't feel claustrophobic. It's a beautiful detail. Brilliant. And there, Paul, is looking out is the rest of the flat.
And do you want to just turn to the left to show the relationship with the kitchen? Because I don't think we've seen, if you just pan round left. That's it.
Behind the books, yes. There's the kitchen.
Yeah, it's just worth looking at the way the kitchen sits. And then if you move around again very slightly to the left so people can see, you've got the kitchen over there on the right, the bedroom on the left. And it is astonishing the way so much has been placed in this one really very small space. But do you feel does it feel too big or too small?
Well, I love living here, and I just... So I feel it's about right. Of course, one would always like to have more space, but that just encourages you to have more stuff, doesn't it?
It's also worth saying that we all get a storage cupboard, but possibly more importantly, although they're not open at the moment because of the pandemic, there are 3 or 4 guest rooms, which means if you want people to stay, you just book them into a guest room, which is a really sensible way to do things. Any closing comments from you before we switch back to Sue, Roland? Anything else we should look at very quickly?
Well, I think that's about it, unless I think people can ask questions later.
Yeah. So if you have a seat, and then Sue, are you still with us, so to speak?
Yeah, I think I'm here.
Well, welcome back. And you're now at the top of the staircase. So let's just have a look at your, okay. So do you want to just also, what's really interesting is the window on your left is quite unusual. They were installed in almost all the flats, but like in my case, they were blocked in. But it's quite interesting it survived, because effectively you've got a bedroom with 2 windows, but then linger on the showstopper is the 5 meter high. So you can walk down without my next door neighbor went straight down the stairs and straight through the plate glass window. So don't do that. But if you carefully.
No, well, I was going to say, if I can just start off by actually showing you the stair treads. These are terrazzo, and it's a cantilevered stair, which is actually supported on is hung from the handrail on this side. And the stairs go straight through to next door. Most of the flats, Hatfield was the last of the masonette blocks to be built, and we've got terrazzo with, everybody has, I think, these little inset areas where you could put whatever material you wanted, possibly as a good non-slip idea. So I've got terrazzo, but everywhere else has got concrete stairs. Every other block has concrete stairs. So if we just head down the stairs, and I will take you and just show you the stairs from the other side of the room, which just shows you, I mean, it's just so beautifully designed.
Which way are you facing, Sue?
So I'm facing, there's the window, there's the door. So this is the bottom of the stairs, just looking up the stairs.
And can I just emphasise, because the flats are incredibly well insulated, and the only time I find you hear your neighbours is when they're walking up and down their stairs, because we basically share a staircase.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine if people aren't wearing shoes, but if they're wearing hobnail boots, it can be quite noisy. So anyway, so the other thing to show you then is the end wall here, where there's the hatch, the original hatch, where I've got the large picture. There used to be actually 2 bookshelves, I believe. I haven't got that. And then if we go into the kitchen, I'll just show you first of all. I've got here the original front door. There's the letterbox, the number, and the doorbell, which still works. Just going back into the kitchen, and so this is how you get your letters. You open the flap. The kitchen isn't original. It used to be, the sink used to be at the far end, but I have had all this, the wooden worktops replaced with similar. And what you've got here, Roland talked about the transparency, and again, this is just a perfect position. I've actually got a chair underneath, so I sit here for breakfast and that kind of thing. My predecessor actually filled in with it's a frosted glass, but actually hopefully when the windows, because I think we will all be having our windows replaced, when that's replaced, I shall have a nice clear glass window again and be able to see what's happening. So as I say, that this is just the most perfect view, I think, and a chance to kind of see the staircase, the windows, and everything. If I just go back, the last thing to show you is probably the floor. This is listed. Roland tells me that it's an ash floor, but they're just lovely, lovely little fingers of parquet. And it just, as you can see, especially on a sunny day, it just glows. So I think that's it. Is there anything else you want me to show them, Paul?
I think, yes, if you look again, look at the window frame, because what's really interesting, obviously the windows are recessed, but the space underneath is recessed really beautifully. And that's a really, yes. So in Roland's, there's a bookcase. And in fact, in my flat, we've got a bookcase upstairs. again,
Right. Yeah.
fitted into the windows. But I just think it's really interesting the way you get every element of the flat is framed.
Oh yes, you did miss. Somebody's just put the fire escape upstairs. Oh, and I didn't show you the bathroom either.
Don't go up. No, there's no.
I'm quite happy to go upstairs and show the bathroom. I don't know how time is now.
We've got a few minutes. Let's not do that. Let's have a quick. Let's have a quick view of the whole flat just for a moment. Again, I think it's just really nice to kind of show the whole flat. The other thing to point out, it's difficult to show it, but if you wouldn't mind pointing upwards, effectively you've got 2 bedrooms hanging within this within the living room. So it's just worth seeing how that. So it's an incredibly economical use of space. You've also got, if you just point up to the bathroom, you do have the original doors there, I think.
Yeah.
And again, it's just very, very neat. So I think, if you just pan around one more time, just so people can have another last look. And I think that's probably as much time as we have. And I think I'm now going to hand over to Hafsa and Sian to see if there are some questions. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much, Paul and Sue and Roland, for showing us around. We do have a few questions that have come through. Let me just get those up. So we've got a question about the square footage. I think this was directed mainly at Roland, but I guess you could both answer. And about like the use of space and how approximately how big each of your respective apartments is.
Mine is 55 square meters, which is slightly bigger than many in Crescent House because it has the entrance hall and a bit more space. They do vary because of the curve of the elevation between 45 square meters and 55 square meters. And then on the corners of the building, there are much larger flats with 2 self-contained bedrooms. They're larger family flats, but there aren't very many of those. So that compares with what the plan for London today says is the minimum size permissible is 37 square meters. Isokon flats in Hampstead took it right down to 25 square meters. So they're small, but they're not ultra small. And the clever architecture makes them seem much more spacious than they are.
Yeah, I think I'm not quite sure about mine, but I think it was around 80. But it's the module of the windows is, I think, 4 foot. So with about 12 foot across. But I'm not sure. I didn't think to look that up.
We've got a question from Michael Lewin, who asked about the windows and them being original. He said that the windows in Great Arthur House have been changed, and if you have any issues with having the original windows.
Well, sorry, do you want to go first, Roland?
After you. I think as a councillor, you know more of the story than I do.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, I think the big issue for all of us is the fact that our windows are single glazed. So the flats, and there is very little insulation in any of the other panelling around, so that our flats are extraordinarily cold in the winter. The up and over, you know, my guillotine window, there is a howling draft that comes down in the winter. And obviously we also get a lot of solar gain in the summer. So I think that actually just for living, it will be wonderful to have the windows replaced. I think with Great Arthur, there was a huge amount. I mean, we had huge sample panels, you know, full-size sample panels on the estate that Historic England could come and look at to make sure that they were as close as possible to the original. And I think, you know, it would be just I can't imagine that it would ever be allowed, but the biggest issue would be if they actually tried to replace the guillotines with some other kind of system. I mean, obviously there's probably something slightly more sophisticated than the chain, but you know, since I've been here, I've never had to have anything done to it. You know, it seems to work perfectly well. It's not even been lubricated. So, you know, I probably a bit of WD-40 might make it considerably easier to move. But, you know, I think that just for living in the modern age, and particularly for people who's, you know, trying to heat the flats during the winter, especially this winter, has been extraordinarily expensive.
I would add that one of the issues at Great Arthur and elsewhere is for leaseholders, as distinct from tenants, is the cost. I think that Great Arthur looks absolutely superb now it's been reclad, and it's a completely new curtain wall. It's extremely difficult to tell by looking at it from the outside that it's not the original one, but in fact it is double glazed and it's thermally upgraded in the solid panels. But it looks as though the leaseholders of the 1-bedroom flats in Great Arthur are in for a bill of about 95,000 each, which is quite a lot of money. And I suspect, I'd be very surprised, we haven't seen the figures, if it's not the same in Crescent House. Because it's a bespoke listed building job, it's not an off-the-shelf or design and build solution. It is going to be expensive.
Can I come back with a supplementary, if possible? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, obviously, double glazing by its very nature is a much heavier product. Do you see any problems with actually maintaining the same mechanism within? Because obviously, from a listed building point of view, you have to basically, don't you?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know. The only thing is that if you look in sort of architectural magazines, these sort of guillotine type doors are now made. It isn't as if, I mean, because obviously this was a bespoke job at the time, but there probably is the technology. It's just, right. As Roland said, it will be the cost. Yes, yeah. I mean, the thing is, for me with the hardwood, I can just it's just if you sorry, if you I can't turn the camera.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it's because of the way the windows they've actually got the beading on the outside, so that it actually can be unscrewed, just routed out, and then hopefully we can have double glazing fitted quite easily to our timber windows if our frames are, and certainly my frames are perfect, but I don't know. I mean, we just have to wait and see.
Right.
Yeah.
Best of luck. Yeah.
So we've got a question from, I'm not sure who it's from actually, but about the swimming pool and whether it's for all residents and if it's outdoors.
Shall I answer that one?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's open to everyone. It's run by Fusion, so it's basically a public swimming pool. And although it's been closed during the pandemic, I think it's opening again on Monday. So you're very welcome to come and have I think it's about £5. £6.
Yeah, it's internal. It's not external. It's an internal pool.
So we've got a question as well about the underfloor heating taken out of Crescent House for Roland, and why it was taken out, if you know.
I wasn't here, so I'm not, 100% reliable on this. But what I've been told by residents who were here, and I guess they do know, but maybe not. Maybe it's an urban myth that some of the pipes were corroding. And also, it was very expensive to run because it wasn't individually metered. So it was basically running for 6 months of the year. That's what I'm told. Who knows?
So we've got an interesting question about, apparently there might be some redevelopment plans for Golden Lane, and if there's anything you can share with us about that, or that you know anything about that.
Well, the whole building is, the whole estate is listed grade 2, and in the case of Crescent House, grade 2 star. And now the landscape is listed as a park and garden. I actually submitted it for listing about 5 years ago, and it's recently been approved by the Secretary of State. And so I don't think there will be any redevelopment in the sense of wholesale redevelopment. There will be conservative restoration. There is actually a new extension to the estate being built at the moment, immediately adjacent, which is in fact in Islington, because we're right on the border between Islington and the city. And Paul overlooks that, so he's probably the person to tell you about that. But I don't think there'll be any redevelopment of the Golden Lane itself.
Yes, just to say that there have been two very major buildings. There's one to one side called the Denizen, which is on Fan Street, but that is now complete. And the building that Roland has mentioned is a new school, a City of London Primary Academy, and a new Islington block of flats. And again, the school is nearing completion, and the flats, they've reached their full height now. But I can't see that there would be any room for any other development. I mean, the big thing that is changing is that there are an increasing number of very tall buildings being built either in the financial part of the city or in Islington. So an estate which at one point was not overlooked at all now is encircled by tower blocks, but the estate itself, I think, is very unlikely to be touched in any way.
Great. We've got a question from Peter Jensen, who asked, what's the split between privately owned social housing and private rentals?
It's about 50-50.
Great. Question for Sue from Emily Norton. Are your stairs steeper than normal?
No, I think they are a standard. How many? I think it's 13 treads. So yeah, no, they're quite wide. Treads. They obviously don't meet the regulations today because of the gaps. I don't know. So I'm just going to see if I can turn the camera around again. No, I can't, because the gaps between them are bigger than one's allowed to have. But apart from that, I think they're quite normal stairs. They don't feel steep.
And I think we've got time for one last question from Stephanie, who asks, is there still a social club and bar? There was one originally behind Bayer House. Yeah, it's now the community centre. I mean, it always was, if you like, a community centre. So there is no bar in there anymore. But there is, yes, we do still have the community centre there. And it was 2 or 3 years ago, it's probably 3 years ago, totally refurbished and brought back to a certain extent to its original. So the architects were quite careful in making sure, and again, because it's part of the listed estate, there was a limit to what they could and couldn't do to modernise it.
We're not short of bars and coffee shops around here.
Yeah, I think that's all we have time for today. But if we can just all take a moment to unmute ourselves, I think you should all be able to do that, just to say a huge thank you to Paul for hosting this, and to Sue and Roland for this wonderful tour.
Yes, thank you. Great.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.